All right, we are live on Facebook. This is Meet the Master with Tim Watson. I am joined by George Maybroda this morning. Good morning, sir.
How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's an honor.
Um, how we doing? You were just mentioning that you just finished up throwing some kicks. So you're feeling good this morning?
Yeah, I do that every single day, and it's how I start my day. And normally, I have my quality control team with me. So I have a 3-year-old son and a 1-year-old son. So literally in this training place that I have right now, there are 2 high chairs that you can't see. So, as you know, when you were training with me, we'd have Creed on or Bon Jovi or something like that. So my new stylings are Bluey and Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. So that's actually what's playing on my phone while I train nowadays. So yeah, the playlist has changed dramatically since the last time we trained together.
So never put that on while I'm around you because it'll invoke.
It gets stuck in your head and you can't escape it.
I remember those days.
Yeah,
I can't say I did threw many kicks to them, but
right.
you gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah, well, that's a level of mental training all in itself. So
how do they? I've seen some pictures of them kicking stuff and throwing some punches. Are they?
it's a melee all the time. I mean, it's just, you can't walk in a room without someone getting hit or kicked. And, that's just their environment. And because they've been watching me train. I mean, Zenix 3, he's been watching me train since he's been born, because now you have a baby in a car seat and it's like, so you're not going to train. So no, you put the baby down and the baby's watching you. And a lot of the stuff that he just does not because I've actually taught him anything, just because he's seen me do it his entire life. So it's pretty interesting how children learn that way. So yeah. So, and then, Zane's 12 and he trains with me and he's a moose. I mean, he's probably he's 12, he's 5'7", 5'8", 180 pounds. He's a big dude. So yeah, he hits really hard. And yeah, so, and Jackie, my wife, is a 3rd-degree black belt. So someone's constantly getting punched or kicked or elbowed here.
I love that you called them the Bash Brothers.
Yes. So yeah, it's yeah, man, they keep me young, they keep me training, and that's good. So I'm a blessed man.
Nice. How are the studios going?
On the way to recovery, actually, we had quite a few people that have actually signed up. So right now we're doing everything under the sun to keep people involved. We do indoor classes, we do outdoor classes. I actually just bought a lighting system because it's getting dark so early. We have one at Cornerstone too. The Zoom feed, I think, is here to stay. And I actually think that the Zoom feed is starting to evolve into something that has a little bit more teeth and is a little bit better, because at first it was a Band-Aid and I think it's kind of outlived its shelf life unless we revamp it in some way to make it more relevant for students. But yeah, things are on the upswing. It's definitely, for a while there, we just didn't know, and it was kind of doom and gloom. But yeah, I'm positive about the directions of the school. And I really think that this is one of the outlets that kids can do right now, where we can socially distance and be safe. And it can give them ability to socialize with each other, which they need, because a lot of these kids are still, virtual only in school. So yeah, I feel good about it. And I think it's really kind of a lifeline for some kids to actually interact with other kids in a safe way that, parents get behind. So I feel good about it.
Nice. I know it seems like you're in a better place than you were in the summer, where the government seemed to change, the mandates weekly, and you were trying to just find a way to, like you said, train and teach. And
yeah, well, I haven't sparred in 6 months.
I know,
and that's killing me right now. So Bob behind me is my sparring partner, which is great because he never complains. But yeah, so there's a lot of things. And, as you know, I mean, when I was training and doing a lot of competing, you were in the old Newark days, and so was, Master Dr. Watson, or Master Dr. Yeah. So, and it was based a lot on sparring and those things. And that's really where my love of the martial arts and my area expertise kind of comes into play. So the same thing as at Iron Circle or any place else I train, that's kind of the culture of the school. And to take that element out of it, it's tough. You have to be creative in finding a way to kind of replace it without actually being able to replace it.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I actually was going to segue into that. You've always been a creative guy as far as doing drills and stuff. So what are you? I was talking to someone about this the other day. It's like we have A days and B days. We have a forms night and a sparring night, and our B day has been wiped away. Someone was asking me, "Is like, should I do one of each?" And I was like, typically yes. Right
Right.
now, we're doing a lot of the same things on those days. So what are you doing to try to keep the classes fresh and keep yourself motivated to teach and keep going?
Um, well, one of the things about the martial arts I think that is so great is that as long as you're training consistently and you're paying attention and you're focusing, you start to, and this is after years, start to really understand the nuance of technique and how it can be different and how you can change it and adapt it to different things. For instance, side kick, absolutely positively my favorite kick in all the world. And it's not anything grand. It's just your front leg side kick. And that was imprinted on me by Tom Murray, who was my Taekwondo instructor when I was 12 years old. I mean, I have a bunch of stories about him. But for instance, when you throw a side kick, a side kick is not a side kick in the sense that you can vary chamber speeds, you can vary heights, you can vary how much you turn your hip or you don't turn your hip. You vary it if you're throwing it off of your front leg, and are you going to follow up with your hands? So you can do it if you are just trying to completely clear the road and obliterate what's ever in front of you. So you have one technique, but you have infinite ways to throw it and look at it and train it. And the other thing is, some of the traditional like line drills that we do, especially the hand drills, like a low block into a punch. That's traditional karate stuff. They actually used to fight that way and explode off their back leg and actually drive that punch home. So, I'm trying to teach them about rhythm, about timing, about balance, about wherever you are is where you need to throw some. So sometimes we do line drills and we do it at a pace that, everybody catches their balance in between reps. So I try to vary that so they don't keep their balance, because in free sparring, if you're off balance, you have to throw if you have the opportunity, whether you're on balance or not. So how do you do that? How do you catch your balance? How do you regain your balance? So there's all these little nuances in training that's caused me to explore that, especially because I can't be like, all right, fighting stance, go. And just let time and experience teach them that stuff. Now I have to actually break it down and try to explain it to them. And it's more cerebral and it takes years and years to actually develop that on your own. But like I said, it's one of the cool things about the martial arts, because if you're paying attention, there's always something to learn.
Absolutely. I found it funny when you said that the sidekick was imprinted upon you. Uh, that anyone that has trained with you has had a sidekick imprinted on their ribs. So
That's
nice
fun.
choice of words. A couple people are saying hi this morning. Tara Dierico says good morning. Willie
Yeah,
Richards.
very
Got
nice.
Pam Russell from Region 5. John Paul says this is the way.
Absolutely.
Lindsay from Lindsay Dudgeon from Great Britain says, I'm looking forward to any stories on a younger Master Watson when you were his instructor. There's definitely those. And
There are.
Jose De Almeida is saying hello as well. So you mentioned Tom Murray. So let's go back.
Okay.
Talk to us about how you got your martial arts start, like why martial arts appealed to you, and it's a while ago, but how does that lead you to where you are now?
I was actually just having a conversation with John Paul. He's actually one of the assistant instructors at Iron Circle. And, he came up the way that a lot of you guys did. He showed promise in class. Then he became one of my training partners, and he was actually one of my free sparring partners when I would fight, stuff like that. So I was having a conversation with him the other day, and he's, my age. He's 48, and he was like, we were talking about something, and I was like, yeah, that was 20 years ago when you were 28. So to think about it, it's funny because I feel 18 until I pass a mirror, and then reality kind of sets in that I'm not. But anyway, so Tom Murray. So the way I got started is kind of interesting because there used to be a program on, it was called Black Belt Theater, and it would play every like Saturday, and it was all these B-rate, Chinese kung fu movies. And it's funny because I had such an impression of these movies when I first saw them. And then I go back and watch them after having years and years of martial arts experience. I'm like, man, the choreography is really bad in a lot of these movies. But that, and I remember when my mother first made the phone call to Diamond State Taekwondo. So Diamond State Taekwondo was literally in the location of where Master Godwin started the Hokessen school at not at Lantana Square, but at Coffee Run. So this is way before your time, but at the top of the hill at Hokessen, as you're going out, there's a little shop, and there was a dentist shop on top of it. Master Klaus remembers it well because that's where I first met him. But Tom Murray, it was the International Taekwondo Federation, and I think that I was 11 or 12 years old. And we were at Pike Creek in a bowling alley, and I was playing a video game. And the main feature of this video game character that I was literally playing, and it's shocking that I'm saying I'm playing video games because how I am with that, but was sidekick. And the way that this guy was throwing it, it was just so cool. And I don't know how much money I spent there that day, but I was like, Mom, I really want to study. I really want to, I really want to take karate, because I didn't know the different styles or anything like. So she called the first one that popped up in the yellow pages at that time on a payphone, and it was Diamond State Taekwondo. And I remember you went downstairs into the school and you sat, and there was no segregated classes. There was no children's class and adult classes. It was all the same. And so I started training there, and it was me and a bunch of other adults, and some of them were patient and some of them weren't. But it was an interesting experience, very different than what we do now. And one of my memories that sticks out at that Taekwondo school was my first belt testing. So my parents dropped me off, and I was there all by myself. So I went through the test and I did the best I can. And I remember that the last thing that we did was breaking, and I had never seen a board, never have any idea I was going to do it. And I was literally, and it was a step behind sidekick was the break. And I was the only person at the test of like 20 people that didn't break. So the board didn't break, and everyone started to leave, and my parents weren't there. So I was standing outside of the school, and everyone was leaving. And I noticed that, people were getting less and less. So I'm like, I didn't want to have anyone ask me where my parents were or anything else. So I went and I hid behind one of the poles. So everybody left, and I was sitting on the step outside, and I was sobbing my eyes out simply because I was the last one and I didn't break. And then my mom shows up, and, I finished crying at that point and I went home. But I resolved at that point that I wanted to be good at this, that was never, ever going to happen to me again. So I went home, and the basement of my home, which is funny because where I grew up at and where I trained Taekwondo is actually the house that Master Klaus lives in now. He bought that house. And in the area that I used to train at, if you go down in that area, there are still things painted on the wall that I used to kick at, which is kind of cool. So I went and I worked and I worked and I worked and I worked. And my instructor, Tom Murray at the time, he was just like, this is what I want you to do. I want you to go and I want you to get one of those, it's a clicker that they used to use at the Acme. They used to take count inventory with it. So every time you put a can on a shelf, they would click it. He said, get that. He said, I want you to throw 1,000 side kicks each leg every night. And every time you throw a side kick, you click it. And I don't know that I hit 1,000 side kicks each leg. That's a lot of kicks, 2,000 kicks. But I know that I did it until I couldn't do it anymore. And then I started to stow promise, and he started to kind of take me under his wing. And I started to compete. And really, really fell in love with that. And I remember going to Canada to compete, and I was probably 12 years old. And at that time, I've been this big for a very long time. So at 12, I was probably not much smaller than I am now. So they didn't have any place to put me because they couldn't put me with that 12-year-old. So they put me, I think, in the teen adult division at 12 years old. And I ended up winning a gold medal in free sparring for doing that. And they had like the shin pads that didn't have the foam dip and all that stuff. And yeah, so that was the start of it. That school ended up falling apart just simply because at that point, at that stage in the game, the martial arts industry hadn't really kicked off for the business practice and so forth to keep them in business. But yeah, that was my first imprint. And that's actually how I met Master Klaus, because I had a long layoff in training. And then I actually went back to try to find Tom Murray to see if he had reopened the school, because there were rumors that he had. And there was a school there, but it wasn't Diamond State Taekwondo anymore. It was Korean Martial Arts Institute Hokessen. So I met Master Klaus at that point, and the rest is kind of history.
Wow. It's funny, for years I told that story that you would go in the basement and mark the notch and kick. I still tell that story. And then I remember I helped Master Klaus move in, and it was like one of those, it's like, oh my God, that's the spot.
But
It's like, it's real.
right, right.
So I tell people that all the time when they ask, like, oh, what can I do to get better? So you just got to do it. And then I share that story of you as a, a young kid instructor telling you, if imagine if every kid did that, it's like someone asked how to get better, and someone told them, go do 1,000 kicks, and they actually tried to get to that point. You know.
Well, it's funny because I was thinking about that. I'm really, really thankful to you for asking me to do this, because the last 24 hours has been a deep reflection into the last, I don't know how many years I've been doing this, but it's been a lot. And I've really been blessed with having a lot of students that did that very thing, whether it's you or your wife or, Pat Priest or Matt Brown or Jason Church, or just all these people that had actually, listened to what I had to say. And their successes are their successes, but it's really, really cool for me to feel like I was a link in that chain to help get people to where they are now. Because I look at all of you, and it's a source of pride for me, because the students have far exceeded the teacher. But that's the cool thing about being a martial arts teacher. When I say all the time that there are some people that attend your class, and then there are some people that are actually students. And the students are the people that actually listen to what you're actually saying and put it into practice. And I've been really blessed over the years, whether it's been, Korean Martial Arts Institute or Iron Circle or Cornerstone or wherever, to actually have people that have taken what I've said to heart and actually applied it and use it to make themselves better, even if it's in small parts. So that's the really cool thing to me about being a martial arts instructor.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And that's one of the things that I like in these conversations is you hear about those stories, and you don't necessarily teach because of those, but when they do come back, or when you do see those people succeed, it's like,
Right.
wow, it's awesome and good for them. So I agree. So you find Master Klaus in that basement in Hokessen. How do you get started back into the martial arts at that point?
Okay, well, I was having some issues, because I didn't have the greatest upbringing as a kid. I come from a divorced family, and my dad wasn't around. So like martial arts instructors, or even like TV characters, that I would see that would have male traits that I would want to aspire to, they became my role models for that. But when I walked into that school for the first time, I was 300 plus pounds. I remember Master Klaus gave me a uniform. It was a size 6, and I couldn't get it to close. That's how big I was at the time. So I'm doing an introductory lesson, and Master Klaus has changed quite a bit over the years to where he can adapt to kind of the students' needs. But I think he was maybe a Chodan or an Ida in that time, and he was just kind of balls to the wall, 100% forward. So he tried to kill me in that intro lesson. I remember I didn't make it through, but I could still kick very well. So he kind of saw that in me. So I was down there and I did that. And, I was supposed to come back. I think it was Wednesday or Thursday. And I just got done seeing The Perfect Weapon with Jeff Speakman, a Kempo movie. And I was like, man, that's a really cool style. Maybe I'll try that. So I tried a style. I actually didn't come back to the school until a year later, but I actually went and tried Kempo, and that wasn't for me. I didn't really like the way that they kicked. It wasn't Korean stylish enough for me, not kick heavy, the style that I really like. So a year went by, and then March 15th, 1993, I actually went back and started training with Master Klaus in now the Lantana school, which was right beside the pet store, and then Tuesday morning. And I started there. And, Master Klaus and I kind of had a bond. I was one of those students. I would literally, stand in front of the mirror at Hokessen and just kick and kick and kick and kick and kick. And I was normally the first one in and the last one out, and probably driving him bananas, because somehow I got his home number, and, I would call him in the middle of the night and ask him questions about my technique. And he drove me to Philadelphia because I was having trouble free sparring. I think I was a green belt, and he only known me for like 6 months, but he drove me to Philadelphia to Asian World, when Asian World was still in that location in Chinatown, and bought me the Dao Jeet Kune Do. And, I would read through that. And yeah, so he has been, if I had to pick one main Tongshido teacher who's kind of been prevalent, I've had quite a few teachers over the years in various different styles, but Master Kloss is definitely my first Tongshido teacher. And, still even today, I mean, we own Cornerstone Martial Arts together, but and he's not teaching me as much technically now, but the words that he says and how he approaches things. And, you know, I still consider myself his student, even though that, we own something together. So yeah, so that was my first interaction with Master Kloss. He's literally beaten my uniform top off of me before. Um, as far as fighting goes, I think that out of everyone that I've fought, meaning like free sparring class or had an elevated level and free sparring with, you stay after and you fight with your instructors, there are two people that stand out. One was Master Kloss, because if you ever fought Master Kloss, he has such an unorthodox style and his sense of timing is so different than mine. And then it would be you, because out of everyone that I fought, you fight the most like I fight. So it's very, very hard. It's almost like fighting a mirror. So, and because you're younger and you're faster and you're stronger, it's almost like I have a thought, but you've had it like a split second before I did. I'm like, well, there went that opportunity. So, those are the two people I think over the course of my martial arts career, as far as free sparring goes, that have given me fits as far as, having to stand in front of.
Yeah. Master Kloss is that guy who can stand there and kind of lean over with his hands on his knees, and then before you know it, he's spun your headgear around with like a spinning, a backspin axe kick or crescent kick. And I had that happen to me on multiple times, and he would yell. He would be like, "Oh man, you're so fast!" And it's like, oh, "I'm sorry, I'm pretty sure you just kicked me in the face."
Yeah, he's that guy.
One of the great lessons I still remember in fighting you is, I don't remember what belt I was, but we were fighting and I stopped and it's just like, I was frustrated. It's like, you're just so fast, I can't keep up with you. And you just looked at me and you go, I'm not fast. I just have, it's all about the timing and the rhythm and figuring out when to go. And that helped me out a lot. It was one of those kind of aha moments, because it was like I was trying so hard to push stuff in, when it's like, oh, I don't have to try that hard. I just I have to be there at the right time. So,
Right.
and wait for the right moment. So that, those sparring times, even, you look back, I was in Newark from 2001, and then I left in 2004 and went to Hokessen with Master Kloss. But the lessons that I learned and the sparring that was happening at that time was just so instrumental in my martial arts journey, because you mentioned a lot of the names, Jason and Pat and Matt Brown and Aaron and I can name Doug Height, Chuck Keener, like all those names. Which
Chris Uttenreither, and you had,
uh,
it was a land of giants. It was crazy at that time. It was so cool to remember back at just the line of people that were like from, I guess, 18 to like maybe 30 that could just throw at that time. I mean, you always got good work in at that school. And that school produced a lot of Tongshido masters. It was really cool.
Yeah. So what led you to, actually real quick, a couple people are saying hi. Janine Paul says John Paul swoon. Oh, he's got a fan out there. And then Rosie Rodriguez, one of my former students from Kaizen, said, "Good morning. Hi, Rosie. I hope you're doing well." What was the path to lead you to the Newark KMAI?
So there became, when was it? So I started working for Master Godwin October 6th, 1996. That's when I started working for him full time. And there became an opening at the Newark school that was filled by Mark Carr at the time, Mr. Carr. So he was before your time, but he was instrumental in developing some of my skills as a fighter too. And there's a lot of background that I kind of have to lay, but just to answer your question directly. So I remember going into the Hokessen school to train, and Master Godwin had this questionnaire. He said, "Hey, are you still interested in being a martial arts instructor? Because that wasn't my first go round at being a martial arts instructor. There was an opportunity that came up about 12 months earlier for East Coast Karate, which was owned by Ed Samain. And it was in Westchester, Pennsylvania. And the school that I was going to be teaching at, like it was up there. So I lived in Camden, Wyoming, Delaware at the time, and the school was like up around Westchester, PA. So literally to drive to work, it was a 2-hour drive. So I took the job. I was a Chodan belt, I wasn't a black belt. I took the job. I did the very best that I could with it. I ended up learning a lot, meeting a lot of cool people. Met Chun-Sik Kim, trained with him, who was actually one of Grandmaster Shin's students from Korea, really, really good technically. But that didn't work out. So anyway, I go into the Hokessen school, and Master Claus asked me, are you still interested in being a martial arts instructor? My words were, only for you. That's what I said to him. He said, okay, fill this out. So I got this, and I know that he had given this to me, and I think that I was a Chodan at the time, and he had given this to Idans and Samdans and people that had a lot more experience than I did just teaching. So I'm like, how do I differentiate myself between everybody else? So I really, really took my time with it and answered each question the best I could. And I was like, you know what? I want to make this look as professional as possible. So I'm going to type it all out and make it look like I'm handing in my resume to him. And I did that. And I'm thankful that I did, because as soon as he got it, Master Claus was in the room when he got it. And Master Godwin looked at it and handed it, showed it to Master Claus. He said, look, typed response. And it kind of lit up. So he read through it, and I got a call or two the next day. And then you went traditionally to a diner in Stanton, and you had lunch with him, which was basically he was eating and you were listening, kind of the thing. And we went through it, and he asked me a bunch of questions, not because he wouldn't let me eat, because I was so nervous I couldn't at the time. So we went through a bunch of questions, and he ended up hiring me. So I started at the Newport location, which was pre-Stanton, which was actually where I learned how to fight, trial by fire. So I started there, and then Mr. Carr decided he was going to go in the Marine Corps, and he left the Newark studio, and then Master Godwin transferred me there. So that's how that worked.
My food story was we went to hibachi, and he was like, I still remember, he goes, you think we can eat $100 worth of sushi? I was like, well, we could certainly.
God love the man.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, it's funny. Obviously there's like you said, there's a lot of backstory, but we only have an hour or so.
Right.
So yeah, obviously I started in Newark in 2001, and it's funny, I came in for a buddy day, and I still to this day talk about, it's like, think of a friend to bring into class, because you never know who that friend could be. Like, they could stick around and be in it for the long haul. And that was me. I like martial arts, but that first class, I still remember being in the back. I had no idea what I was doing. And I remember throwing front leg kicks, and then afterwards just being completely dead. And I came in on that Saturday and signed up, and got my sparring gear like 2 months later, and started getting my rear end beat by all those people that you talked about. I remember there was a Thursday class where it was all levels sparring night, and I mean, would be black belt, black belt, black belt. There were no breaks.
Right. Well, see, that's how I came up, because like I mentioned the old Newport school, and
Right.
that literally, so one of the things that I like about the way that I teach, but yet it's kind of almost been a handicap too, is that I like to train in class when I teach. And sometimes it's been really good, and sometimes it's like, well, maybe I'm out of balance with that. So it's something that I've constantly had to look at, but it's very hard for me to watch martial arts and not participate actively. That's one of those things that has always been a challenge for me. But at the old Newport school, that's how it was for me. It was literally, the lineup was like Master Godwin, Mark Carr, Jeff Literal, Rob Claus. It was like Samdan, 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 Idan, Idan, Idan. And I was the red belt, and I was the feeder fish. I got the crap kicked out of me week in and week out. But the lessons that I was learning, I mean, the lessons that I was learning far exceeded the tuition that I was paying. That was for sure, because, I was not going to get that level of training or that high level of black belts anywhere. And I remember that I was starting to have aha moments around blue belt. Rich McBride, who was the medevac pilot for the Delaware State Police, and literally Kempo guy, Tong Sudo guy, would kick. They used to call him RoboCop. And he he stepped into me and I hook kicked him in the face with my front leg. And I remember distinctly hearing the slap. And I think that he was like, good shot. And then he spun me around and punched me in the head like 50 times. But it was like little things like that that started to click. Those little breaks in rhythm and those little opportunities that I actually started to be able to capitalize on. That was like a drug to me. So I would get one and the next one might not come for weeks after that, but then I would get another and then they would come more frequently. And that's the cool thing about martial arts. You have to really enjoy the bitter of it, I guess. You have to understand that it's a process. You have to fall in love with the process of training. And that's really one of my main focuses right now with students is that drive me nuts. I mean, you and I just had a conversation about a student that came back to Evolution that had been my student back in the 90s. And what's puzzling to me is why would you take time and dedicate yourself for 6, 8, 10 years to something and then stop? And even if you're not involved in a school, why wouldn't you train that on your own? Why wouldn't that become part of your everyday life? And even if you're not involved in a school, why would you spend so much time on that skill set and then just put it down? So that's really kind of been my introspective lately is what can I do to make this more relevant to the everyday? So even if you're not involved training with me directly, you're still training every day because there's vast benefits in that. Everything good in my life has come from the martial arts, like bar none. So that's kind of become my mission and my focus right now is, okay, look, this is seasonal. Master Godwin says we're only together for a season and then, you move on to other things, but how can you extend your season to where it's longer than just being with me? That's still relevant to you, that you still train every day, maybe pass that along to your children. Because especially with some of the stuff that we're going through right now, martial arts has saved me. Being able to train, being able to center myself, being able to be like, all right, there's this whirlwind of chaos with the businesses and my children being at home and everything else going on. Where can I focus and center myself to have the emotional, mental stability and energy to deal with all this stuff? And it's really been through my martial arts training.
Yeah. Even throughout all the years, you obviously have other hobbies, whether it be, now it's trail riding or motorcycles or whatever the case may be. You always took that time to even if it was just throwing kicks for whatever at the beginning of the day, you always had that moment where you were always still refining your technique or at least keeping it sharp. So I think that's a good lesson for even if you quit, but are still able to use that skill set in another area of your life. Obviously, martial arts would be ideal, but if you can use that in other parts of your life, that's a win as well, I think.
Yeah, and you know what the thing about this is they're all perishable skills.
Right.
I mean, I kick every day, especially like being 48, about to be 49 years old. I kick every day because if you see martial arts masters who have blown their knees apart, a lot of the times it's not because they've overtrained, it's because they haven't trained. And then they come back into class and they try to do something they were able to do 5 years ago. And their body's just not accustomed to that range of motion. So one of the things, especially being an older athlete, is you need to keep your body in the range of motion. You need to keep your body used to throwing like that, your muscles firing like that. That's vastly important. And you want your technique to be like you're flipping a light switch on. You don't want to have to cerebrally think, lift your knee, turn your hip, throw your kick. You just want it to go. And the only way to do that is to do it as much as you can, kind of like you're walking or you're eating or doing something like that. If you think about one of the things that we do, and I bring this up all the time, as far as skill set is concerned, if you think about eating, you're taking a sharp metal object and you're sticking it in a target area that's not very big under your nose, and you're not puncturing your cheek and you're not stabbing yourself in the eye. You do it with your eyes closed, your eyes open, or whatever. Well, how can you do that? You do it because you've done it so much. There's so much repetition involved in that. And martial arts is no different. I mean, look, Every day that ends in Y, you should train, period.
Awesome. Couple comments coming in. Paul Carlin says, "Good morning, Master Maybroda changes lives. My daughter and I are honored to be students of his."
He's a beast. He's truly a beast.
And Janine Paul says, "They say it takes a village to raise your children. I'm happy to say Master Maybroda is part of our village. Thank you for all the lessons you've taught my kids and John Paul." So I remember coming up, you were a pretty active competitor in the World Tong Soo Do Association. What led you obviously, I know you're a very competitive person. What led you to competing? What drove you to compete even past obviously your time in competing at World Tong Soo Do?
Well, it's important to know yourself, I think, and know what motivates you and what doesn't. And I think if you're going to have longevity in training, that's one of the critical issues. For me, I need a carrot in front of me all the time. And it's not even so much medals and trophies, because some of the biggest letdowns in my life is when I remember the first time I won a grand championship trophy, and it was goal for mine forever. And I won it, and I expected pyrotechnics to shoot out of the floor and, you know, people to carry me off the tournament and people to make a big deal. And I don't think anyone said anything about it at all. And I'm just like, wow, I've really missed it here, because instead of focusing on the process, instead of focusing on the training that goes behind getting to there and really enjoying the process, sparring with my friends, you know, doing my form by myself late at night, all those little things that really are the culmination of why we compete in the first place. You really have to enjoy that process. So that, as far as competing goes, I enjoy the process and the grind of training for competition much more than I do competition. But you need that point in time to kind of have something to train for, if that makes sense to me. So yeah, so before I've competed quite a bit in World Tong Soo Do, trained with some of the best that they have to offer. You know, Master Maybroda, a bunch of other guys, Master Borriello, Master Davis. They were all in the same division with me. Master Massaroni, all those guys were awesome. And you know, they beat me free sparring, and I beat them free sparring, and it's the forms competition was completely different. I didn't have the body structure or just the crisp enough technique to like beat a Master Maybroda doing forms. But because I was competing with somebody that had his level of skill, it constantly kept me pushing. And I think that that's critical. And that's one of the things that I'd really like to see with World Tong Soo Do right now that I think would be helpful, is if they had some kind of an outlet for people to actually compete and get involved in that, because I think that there's lessons to be learned there. It's definitely not about the trophy. And after that, it didn't become about the trophy, because I've probably thrown 90% of my trophies away. There's a couple that I still have because they have special sentimental meaning to me. But I remember the first time that I saw a mass trophy dump. And it was when we were moving from the Newport school to the Stanton school, and Master Godwin, he had a room full of trophies. There had to be 150 trophies in there. And I'm like, "Sir, what do you want me to do with these?" And he's like, "Throw them in the dumpster." And I was like, I felt like somebody hit me in the head with a baseball bat. I'm like, "Why would you do that?" And, you know, he's like, "You'll understand." So, and eventually I did. That it's about the training. It's about the experience of being with your friends. It's about we're at the tournament now. We're going out to lunch before the tournament. It's about the nerves that you get before you compete. I swear to you that before I step into a ring, whether it is, you know, to do Olympic style taekwondo, which I've done, or to do point karate, or to step into a kickboxing ring, before I actually put foot in that 20 by 20, I'm hoping that the building starts to burn down. I'm hoping somebody pulls the fire alarm. My nerves are such that to compete at that moment is the last thing that I want to do. And then I'll step into the ring, and it's just like, now I'm home. So it's to go through those nerves, to go through all that. That's all important skills that you can't get unless you have the experience. So my recommendation to anyone that wants to compete is understand that it's a process. You don't get better at competing until you compete, because there's nothing like being in the arena. But it's not about the trophy. It's all about your skill set. It's all about getting better. You don't gauge whether you won at a tournament or not by the plastic metal junk. You gauge it on, did I improve? Did I make friends? Did I handle myself well? And then after I'm done that, I'm going to go do it again. So I have a saying at Iron Circle that says, what's the rule of again? And all the students say again. And then I'll say, and then they'll say again. And then I'll say, and then they'll say again, meaning that it never, ever, ever stops.
That's great words of advice, and I agree wholeheartedly with them. Because, like you said, the win is fleeting, but the skills that you hone in the process of getting to that point is really that's the prize. That's what you win. So I agree with that. Let's talk about Iron Circle. So how long have you been at Iron Circle now?
I've been at Iron Circle for 10 years.
Wow, it's crazy.
It is crazy. It is crazy. Blink twice, right?
Yeah.
And I've got people at Iron Circle that are family members to me. Lisa Iozzi is like a sister to me. She has 4 boys in the program. Matthew just went off to school. He was one of the instructors at Iron Circle. Kid was like my son, really, really good fighter, strong kid. I mean, he's very akin to you and Pat and all the guys that I've trained. I mean, he's that level technically. He's really, really good. Near and dear to my heart. The Pauls, obviously, the Carlins. It's funny that one of the hard things about being a martial arts instructor is that people eventually, most of them move on, but you get these emotional attachments to people because you see them week in and week out, and you see them develop, and you see them become more than they were before that they came in. And maybe that's not an accurate statement. Maybe you just see them realize their potential, and that's more it. So you get emotional ties. But Iron Circle's been great. Iron Circle was owned by Master Wariella before me. And I remember coming back from Master's Clinic, and we were having a conversation because the idiots that we decided to drive to Alabama, which I decided I was never going to do again, then ended up doing again. But so that long in a car ride, we were talking late at night. I think everybody else in the car was asleep, and he was going to make a life change and do some other things. And he was asking me, and I was talking to him about Iron Circle. And, I was thinking about it, and it was an hour and 20 minutes away from where I lived at the time. But I'm just like, you know what, let's throw caution to the wind and let's do it. So I started teaching there in December of 2010. And the rest is history. It's been a great ride. It's been a great school. I've taught some really, really good people, have champions come out of that school, ton of black belts. I'm thankful for that. And, I'm really, really thankful to Master Godwin because, wow, I just can't. If I started trying to repay that man now for everything that he's done for me, martial arts wise and other, I couldn't even come close. I mean, the things that I learned, the college level education about how to run a martial arts school. And it's just, it's mind blowing sometimes the level of success that I've been able to achieve, but it's been on his shoulders because he spent the money to teach me these things. He sent me to conferences. He took the time to train me for 2 hours a week that was outside of the physical training that we would get. So yeah, it's like, your instructors, I've been blessed to have really, really good martial arts instructors. So, if it wasn't for Master Godwin and his tutelage and the hours and hours and hours that he poured into me, not just martial arts wise, but continuing education, martial arts business wise, which I hated when it was happening, but it was really, really useful. Yeah, that's so, sir, I don't know if you're listening to this or you're going to say it, but thank you from the bottom of my heart because, I would not be where I am today without that man for sure.
Yeah, it's funny. I obviously sat in those meetings, and at the time they were excruciatingly long.
Yeah.
But the laughs that we would get from the text messages and going back and forth, and then now, being a martial arts instructor slash, small business owner slash janitor,
right?
You that part is just, you can do it on autopilot. Like when someone calls, you know exactly what to say to them. When someone comes in, you know the process, and it's because of all of those hours that we put in, whether we like them at the moment or not. Like you said, were lessons that we still use to this day.
Yeah, I did not want to test for master because of Master Godwin, because I was like, I can't be that guy. I mean, because that's what a martial arts master looks like to me. I mean, it's technically business wise. I mean, no one's perfect, but it's like I can't be that guy, and I didn't want to stop competing, but yeah, I couldn't. I didn't want. I didn't think I could be that. And then I had a conversation with him, and I actually had a conversation with Grandmaster Shin, who I actually miss a lot because Grandmaster Shin was an interesting individual in the fact that he would take time to actually kind of get into your head and know you, and sit down with you. I remember when I was getting ready to test the master, or he was considering me, he actually had me drive to Philly, and I sat in his office and had a conversation with me about it, just to make sure that my head was in the right place. And basically he said, look, it's never a concern with you physically. It's just, I want to make sure that you understand what this is all about, with that, which was really, really cool. And real quick, I remember that I was supposed to go to Masters Clinic, but I wanted to compete. And one of the things that I wanted to do was I wanted to win a world championship cup. And I forget what year that was, but he said, look, it's your, if this is your dream, if this is your goal, to go do that. So I did, and I ended up coming up short. But I remember competing at the regional championships that year, and I think I was in line to win the senior cup. And he came up to me and he said, "Are you winning?" And I said, "Yes, sir. I think I'm going to take the cup." He's like, "Good, you're done." I was like, "Oh, well, I guess that's the end of that." He says, "I'll see you in Alabama." So it was really cool. We suffered a great loss with that, just simply because of how he dealt with people. I think that was the most impressive thing about the man.
So you mentioned you didn't want to become a master because you held Master Godwin to such a high standard. And I know you've vacillated on this throughout the years. What does being a Tong Sudo master mean to you nowadays?
Well, this is probably going to be the least PC answer that you've ever gotten for this, but I hate the title. I'm not a fan of it at all. And not for other people, because other people need to make the decisions for themselves on it, but for me, because I'm a flawed individual, because my technique is never perfect, because I feel like, I've seen people that I was like, yeah, that guy's a martial arts master, and I kind of weigh myself against that. And I'm like, ah. So it's something that I have to aspire to daily. It's like, if you're going to wear that belt, if you're going to do that, you should be training every day. You should be the example to your students. You should be able to demonstrate everything that you're asking them to do. We're all human and we're not perfect. But you need to be doing the best that you can in all front. And I'm far from good at it. To be called, Mr. Maybroda is fine with me. I actually prefer that a little bit. Being a master feels weighty to me, very weighty. And I think it should. I think too many people put the belt on and then rest on the accolades of yesterday. And that's not what that needs to be about. That, you should be first in line. You should still be the guy in the school that gets there early and is, when your students come in, you just had a sweat on you. You just trained, you just improved yourself, because maybe your technique isn't as good as it was when you're 18 or 20 or 30 or whatever. But this is a constantly refining, never ending process of improving yourself and trying to get better. And like I said, finding those nuances in the martial arts that are kind of secret to you, because the illusion is that I teach you martial arts. That's never been my philosophy. I'm your guide, but mentally, physically, you spend more time with yourself than you spend with me. It's the practice by yourself that no one sees that really develops your martial arts skill. So, being a master, I try to be as good an example of how to be a practitioner of the martial arts and apply that in my everyday life. But yeah, it's weighty, and it's not something that I necessarily enjoy. I feel like it's more of a responsibility to me. And for me, it translates more into the training and teaching than it does into the service aspect of it. But yeah, so I would say that's what it is for me. To have my students know that I'm training, to have my students know that I'm constantly working on myself, to treat them with respect, to have them treat others with respect, and to understand, if you do have to use this in an altercation, exactly how to carry yourself, how to understand wins and losses, all those little nuances. I feel like that's what really goes into being a master.
Nice. That's a great answer, and I agree. And it's one of those things you never think about it, but when you say that, I say that all the time. As far as an instructor, I'm not going to do anything I don't think that I can't. I'm not going to make you do anything I can't do myself. So I
Right.
strive to make sure that those things stay with me, and that I set the example. Like I want to be the benchmark, right? Obviously everyone's different, but to me that's important. And I'm guessing I got that from you. um Talking about Iron Circle, and when I was thinking of things to talk about, I can't think of Iron Circle without thinking of probably one of my favorite people I ever met through the World Tung Sudo Association. That was Gus Romano.
Mhm.
um if someone had never met Gus, talk a bit about Gus Romano for us, if you would.
Okay, so he's AJ's dad, AJ Romano. I think that's so. Anyway, his son actually trained at Shin Karate in Philadelphia, and like was one of the kids that came up with like Master Fisher and Master DePietro. He was one of the Master Castelli. All those guys that came out of Shin were very, very technically sharp, and his son was no different. But his son, I think, stopped training, and he was really close friends with Borriello brothers. And so when they moved to Malvern and Fraser, and Iron Circle was there, Mr. Romano was there every single class. He would come in and just watch class from the time that the school opened till the time that the school closed. And when Master Borriello left, he stayed.
He came up to
So
school.
yeah, I mean, he did. He literally did. So when I procured the school for Master Borriello, Mr. Romano was there. And Ro, who used to work at the World Tung Sudo headquarters, I mean, she was instrumental on helping me be successful, when I got Iron Circle, just going through all the stuff and transferring everything. So if I had to describe Mr. Romano, I would say he is 50% Mickey from Rocky, and he's 50% like Customato, Mike
Yeah.
Tyson's trainer. I mean, he was just an old school Italian guy who back in the day, if you ever seen pictures of him when he was younger, the guy looked like a movie star. And apparently he could box and could fight and just really enjoyed being there. But he was, the adopted like grandfather of everyone. There was a belt, honorary black belt that he was given, and all the way up until the time that he passed, he was there and being supportive of the school. And yeah, so it's people like that that you meet along the martial arts journey. Some people that don't even do martial arts, like I said, I have a lady, her name is Lisa Iozzi, and she dedicates her time, and she's like cooked the food for the entire Christmas banquet that we have sometimes when we first started out. There's people like that, like Mr. Romano, Mrs. Iozzi, that really are just the backbone of martial arts schools and help. They don't participate themselves, but they're the backbone of how other people are successful. So yeah, he's missed greatly. And yeah, he is definitely, as far as I'm concerned, Iron Circle royalty.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny when you were talking about, when you just said that, about like being the backbone, I immediately flashed back to Jason Church's mom.
Absolutely. Oh my God. Cookies. She would bring cookies to the school. Yeah. So, and she knew I didn't like nuts in the cookies, so she would make them special. Yeah, she's awesome. I miss
The
her.
molasses, her brown sugar molasses cookies or whatever they were like, they were amazing. And she was the same way with every uniform I ever had trimmed or patched when I came up through Newark.
Yeah, I was just thinking that myself, and it's I got into a jam at Iron Circle one time where the students came in without trim on it, and I was just like, I needed it in like a day and a half. So I called her immediately, and she busted it out for me, which was really, really, really cool. So yeah, it Mrs. Church definitely.
That's awesome. So we're believe it or not, we got about 5 minutes left.
Wow, it doesn't feel like an hour.
It's crazy how fast these hours go. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you wanna talk about or mention?
I just want to say that for all the people out there listening and might see this, and then for all the people that aren't, that I'm truly grateful for the lifestyle that I've been able to afford and just the lessons that I've been afforded in the martial arts, all the people that I've been able to meet and to train, you know, it's been an incredible journey. And I just highly recommend martial arts just simply because of how much you find out about yourself through the training of it. And I think that that self discovery and finding out how much more you are than sometimes you perceive you are is invaluable. And then, you know, I look back at the amount of people that have become masters that have been my students at time, and it's unbelievable. I mean, obviously there's there's Master Priest, there's a bunch of people, and I'm so proud of all of you for your contributions and the students that you produce. And my heart is full with the entire thing. But what I would say is that, look, if you're going to train, which means every day. And you have to have a plan for training, which means that I think some people are too, oh, well, this happened during my day. So the only time that I'm going to take away from my day is my training time. So I'm not going to train because work came up or school came up or the kids came up or whatever. And those things do come up. That's called life. But I think that you have to have an active plan every week, in and week out. So, hey, if something comes up, how do I get my training in? What do I do? What's my plan to do that? That's got to be paramount because, like I said, my training centers me. And without it, I'd be a mess. So I think that the same is alike for a lot of different people, whether they know it or not. So I would say, look, have a plan to train every day. It will definitely improve your life. I mean, the proof is in the pudding with all the people that we've been associated with. And every day is a good day to train. I've never had a day where, I've trained, whether it's been awesome physically or not so great physically, where I was sorry that I did it. So, that would be my advice to everybody. Get involved, train. It's a process. Enjoy it. It's pretty much it.
Nice. As you were talking, I was looking at your wall, and I meant to bring this up earlier. You've been working on a project, the Marshall Way.
Yes.
How's that going? Or maybe talk about that a little bit for me.
It's going really, really well. So we developed the process, Master Klaus and I, and then Matthew Iozzi, developed this to be a program that would allow people to train in the current environment, but also teaches them to train every day. So it gives them strategy that, hey, if you only have 15 minutes, how do I get it in? And some people look at 15 minutes like it's not worth it, but it absolutely positively is. Or how do I break down my different training priorities throughout the day? So maybe it's 5 or 10 minutes at a shot here or there, but the Marshall Way is my priorities in the martial arts. What do I think if I had to take all the stuff that I've learned over the course of the years and put it into one system, what would it be? And that's really what the Marshall Way is. So it's very sidekick heavy. So there's a lot of kicks to it. It's a great program. Master Klaus is involved with it. There's a lot of different things, and you can it's completely online. I think it's like $12 a month to do it. There's a couple lessons a week, 2 lessons, then 2 cardiovascular strengthening conditioning lessons, a challenge at the end of the week, flexibility stuff in there. So it's been fun to do, and being in front of a camera and actually have to videotape these lessons has been challenging, and it's great because it means that I have to stay sharp, and it gives me that carrot that I was talking about that I have to make sure that I constantly have in front of my face to stay motivated. So yeah, it's been a really, really cool journey with that.
That's cool. And it goes right along with the message that you've talked about the whole hour, which is find a way to train. And I also want to say that it doesn't necessarily mean if it's Tang Soo Do, awesome. I know you've cross-trained doing Muay Thai. You and I trained doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So whatever, get out and train every day to you, do it.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, obviously we could probably fill at least another hour easily.
At least.
But I want to thank you for joining me today. I had a lot of fun. Like you said, an hour flew by. Yeah, it was great to catch up, and maybe we'll set up a time to knock the rust off each other for some sparring one of these
Man,
days.
I got to tell you that would be awesome. I'm so proud of you and everything that you've been able to accomplish. Just watching you do this stuff and conduct yourself with these interviews, and just watch how you're so respected in the martial arts community, especially in World Tong Soo. Yeah, it almost brings a tear to my eye. So it's good that we're ending here. So no one sees me get emotional on video, but yeah, it's been great, and this has been a blast. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
You got it. Thank you, sir.
All right, have a good one.
Talk soon.
Talk soon.